Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Uncle Brett here. Tonight, episode 20, I am joined by local Michigan big buck killer, Jake Bollinger. I met Jake over the internet like I do most of my friends these days, which is a weird thing to say, but true nonetheless. Jake has a very similar philosophy as myself as it relates to hunting here and abroad or in general. And, I knew that I really wanted to talk to him and could probably talk to him for several episodes or just sitting around the fire talking stories or the pool and just hanging out and just talking in general. And he's just such a nice guy and a wealth of knowledge and stories. And you can see his face light up. And you can't because you didn't get to talk to him on Zoom, but I did. And you can really see him light up when he talks about habitat improvement and doing more for the earth than the earth is doing for him. And that's really special. Not a lot of people feel that way. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Uncle Jake coming up next. Thanks. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Angel Road Outdoors, the podcast. This is episode 20, and I am joined by a friend of mine who I have met over the internet, local Michigander, Jake Bollinger. Welcome, Jake.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining me. I mentioned that I sort of know you only from the internet, which isn't entirely true because I did meet you in person this past summer at the Mobile Hunter Roadshow, but I don't know a lot about you. Like, I don't know a ton of who you are as a person and as a family man, just what I see on Instagram. And so hopefully tonight we can get into a little bit deeper and get to know you better.
Sounds like a plan, man.
Cool. Well, why don't you take just a little bit of time or as much time as you want. And I would like you to, on the front end of the episode, tell people where they can follow you or get in touch with you as a person, as a business, now that you are a distributor of a product, and also just a little bit about yourself.
A little bit on Facebook, just Jake Bollinger. And then most of my interaction on social media is on Instagram, Jake Hunts or Jake_Hunts Michigan. That's where I do most of my posting. I like the Instagram feel a lot better than Facebook, so to say. But I've been hunting my whole life. 12 years old, got out with my compound and got my first buck on my grandpa's farm. And, just never look back, of constantly improving. 1998 was a year that changed my life. My brother shot a 201 1/8 inch Michigan giant out of a tree stand that I hung. And it just kind of changed everything for all of us. It went from the classic Michigan hunters where it was almost brown it's down to really starting to focus on letting some younger deer go. And of course we didn't go straight into booners or anything crazy like that, but it was 8-point, about as wide as its ears was our minimum. And then, of course, you just kind of keep building up and just learned a lot along the way. I'm self-taught. My brother did hunt, but it was more of a, here's a compound, learn how to shoot it. And then the rest of it was on your own, figure it out. And I just found out real quick, young in life, that I absolutely loved being out in the woods, chasing anything. But whitetail was definitely my true passion and calling, and still is. And just kind of taking it to the extreme and getting to where I am today. So it's just been a constant stepping stone.
Dude, that's awesome. And you're a husband and a father, correct?
Yep, correct. Yep. Got my wife. Well, we've been married for almost 15 years. Got 2 kids, a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old daughter. Both of them, I absolutely love bringing out into the woods with me, shed hunting. My boy is a frickin' shed whiz. He finds more than I do. But I just found it an absolute blast to have my kids doing stuff with me. So I try to involve them with everything I can outside.
Man, that's so cool to hear. And we'll touch on that a little bit later because I have some thoughts, not negative, as it relates to kids in the outdoors and hunting, but more so want to get your opinion on kids in the outdoors and hunting and stuff. And I think I saw recently that you are either partnered with or a local Michigan, maybe a territory distributor for Vitalize Seed. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So a buddy of mine a couple years ago, from what it sounds like, is when Vitalize first got started, tried it out, and kept, kind of poking at me to try it, because I've always dabbled in just random things and tried different seeds and different, random things, just trying to learn. And after the first year, I kind of bought into it a little bit of what was going out there. And then, of course, I started following Vitalize, and I'm a deer nerd. Like, I'll tell everybody, I'm an absolute nerd when it comes to this. I like getting in the weeds about it, not just hunting, but, I really like just learning their habitats, their movement, all that kind of stuff just got me, so starting to listen to Al talk, it kind of just got that spark in me of, getting into this a little more. And then I'm on some ground now. My farm that I'm on is some pretty terrible soil. It's been heavily agged for as long as it could, was around. So the soil just needs a lot of help. So I started testing it and playing with it, and I just was blown away at how well it actually did and how much variety of food sources throughout the year. Instead of just having my food plot getting hammered for a month, it's getting hammered all summer long, right into, hitting carbon load, which is the fall blend, and it just carries right on. And then that carbon load comes up in the spring with some nice green before almost everything else. And it was just, I just bought into a hook, line, and sinker, and because I just saw the results so quickly, almost faster than some of the other items that I've ever tried before. So I felt, I'm not really a big gear guy when it comes to hunting. I'm not really a fad follower, but I just felt so inclined to kind of get this product out there and use this product, because what I saw, that kind of drove me to reaching out to Vitalize Seed and seeing what the possibility was to become a dealer. So my area, I call it the Golden Triangle: Jackson County, Washtenaw County, and Lenawee County. We all know there's some giants running around here, and there's a lot of people that are focusing on habitat and QDMA or NDA type stuff. And it just felt like the right thing to do to get that product to people a little bit closer, a little bit easier, cheaper. If you order it from a dealer, your local dealer, you can actually buy it cheaper than you can straight from Vitalize Seed off their website. So keep that in mind if you're interested in the product. Look at their dealer map and take a look, see if you got a dealer close to you.
That's good to know, because I have bought from them, and I thought, man, this is a lot of seed for a good price.
Yep.
You and I will talk more about me and seeds, because I am an asshat as it relates to the proper way to do things. But I think what you said in that summary is something that we'll talk about tonight, that there are people who are very passionate about what you just explained. And those people want to share that with the rest of us, because it's something that you like to talk about. And
absolutely,
I have found, not just in Michigan, I think the community of hunting itself, if you can weed out the assholes who have something bad to say all the time, because there's a lot of them, the core group of people are not only friendly, but helpful and willing to share as much knowledge and wisdom as they have. And if you're someone who's just getting started, just take your time, find the right group of people or groups of people, and just ask questions. The bulk of them will respond to you over social media and will help you. And then you could exchange numbers. And these guys, people like Jake, people like Al, Al's what? Listen, when I listen to Al, I have to pause, write things down, Google it, and then go back to listen again, because I'm like, man, that guy is full of wisdom.
He is a straight up wizard, and that's,
yeah.
And I, people that may have seen, my Instagram or whatever, I share his stuff a lot, because it's just the knowledge base there is books ahead of what I am. You know what I mean? It's not even, I'm not even close to where it's at. So I just love to be able to sit down and listen to people like that talk and try to learn as much as I can. So
that's awesome, man. Well, I love that. And I think that's super cool. And I will be most likely, if I decide that I'm going to hunt this property that's just up the road from me, it's the one that I probably have the most ability to manipulate a certain area into a little food plot, something to hold the deer there. You and I will be doing some business because I'm in your area all the time, and certainly will be utilizing your services. So I would like to hop in the DeLorean and fire up the flux capacitor and head back to 12-year-old Jake Bollinger, get in his compound. I can't remember if you said this out loud. Have you always lived in Michigan?
Yep.
Okay. What was it like?
Always.
How old are you?
That?
How old are you?
I'm almost 40.
Okay. So we're relatively close in age. What was it like for you as a 12-year-old growing up? What was the scene like back then? The scene.
Single mother house. Single mother house with my 2 older brothers. It just kind of, I'll never forget really what kind of hooked me with even wanting to shoot a bow. My brother come home prouder than a peacock with a deer. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, literally over his shoulders, and it looked like someone's dog. Like, it was tiny. But man, to see my mom and him, just like the excitement of what he just provided for the family, it just kind of latched on. My soul just kind of was like, man, I gotta kind of get into this a little bit. And my brother said, hey, you got to be proficient to be able to get out in the woods. And of course, at the time when I started hunting, there was an age limit. You had to be 12 to hunt by yourself with a bow and 14 to hunt by yourself with a gun. My dad wasn't really big into hunting, but I grew up with an absolutely incredible, I'm going to call it deer family, I guess, if you will. My brothers, me, my grandpa hunted, a couple of my cousins, and my grandpa had a butcher shop that we made in one of his barns. And it was, when I say butcher shop, it was like a commercial butcher, but at home.
Damn.
And we had opening day parties, where people would come 4:00 in the morning and have breakfast. Everybody would just rally around the tailgates. And it was just, one of those things, like, when you look back at it, it molded, a lot of my life now. And it was one of those just like dream situations. I won't lie, I'm super lucky. My grandpa had a piece of property that, of course, I could hunt on. So it was private, and learned my ropes on the private. Dabbled my finger a little bit into some state land when I was, 16 or so, and had a couple of bad instances. One real bad situation
with humans, with other people.
Yeah. Had an old timer hold a gun straight up, pointed her right at me, and said, "This is my spot. You don't ever come back." And I was like, "Okay, gone, dude. Like, you ain't never gonna see me back here." And it left a bad taste in my mouth, so I kind of just, dumped off public land and stuck to the private. But it's still one of those things. I still kind of tell myself, man, there's some great state land around here. I got to try to get back at it, but I'm spoiled. I'll be the first to admit, I've got a pretty good place that I'm hunting right now, and it's just hard to peel off of it. But back in the day, it was, a kill was just the greatest thing ever. It didn't really, my grandpa in the 90s, there was deer everywhere. And I mean, like, deer numbers like there was, even not even today. It was way more deer in the 90s even. So we had our, pick of the litter. And we actually, for a while, we had to kind of like, me and my brothers had to lie to Grandpa a little bit. Yeah, no, we didn't see no deer tonight. Or, no, we didn't see a buck. Because he'd be mad if you let that little buck walk, because he grew up in the Depression and lived through all that. So it wasn't anything about antlers at all. And that's how I grew up. It was meat, and that's all we cared about.
That's interesting you say that, because the older gentleman who owns the private piece that I hunt down in Hillsdale, when I first started going there, I was told, we have a gentleman's agreement, QDMA, 8 or better, 3.5 or older. Okay. I knew the rules, but nobody told Ed. Okay. Ed did not know those were our rules. And so I was always confused when we'd go talk to him at the end of the night on the front porch, and he'd be in his pajamas, you know what I mean? And he would just want to know what we saw. They were always lying to him. And I didn't know why. They weren't telling him, oh, we saw a bunch of does, or we saw a couple of spikes or whatever. And one day I said I passed on a little button buck or something. And we got in the car and they're like, you never tell Ed you passed the deer. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, they were afraid that he was going to kick us off. But the reality is, I think there was a lot of things they thought about Ed that weren't real or true. And so I've learned a lot of things since Ed passed, and our hunting situation is just a little different down there. But it's interesting that you say that you had to keep it from Grandpa, that you didn't see certain things.
Yeah. So, I mean, my grandpa, bless his soul, he really wanted to instill in us old ways, because he never trusted the government. He didn't trust banks. He was part of that generation, and we butchered pigs all ourselves and everything too. And he would tell us, if I could catch the squeal, I'd eat that too. And that, was one of those that saying that kind of stuck with me, was because it's like, that just goes to show you, when you're really desperate, what you're willing to do and how spoiled we are now, right? I mean, the ways that we do, or whatever it may be. So that's kind of always something that's resonated with me through my whole, life. Just not to take things for granted, and to make sure you try to take advantage of everything you can.
I fucking love that. If I could get that on a shirt,
yeah.
I would put that on a shirt and wear that. That is incredible. That's an incredible one-liner, but deep.
Yeah.
And a lot of people need to hear that.
I agree. So the whole thing that little sentence came about is, we would cut the heads in half, and we would boil them, and we would make, head cheese, stuff like that out of them. And one day, him and his old buddy, I see him with a spoon, and they plop out an eyeball out of that pig head. And I watch, and Grandpa tosses that bad boy in his mouth and goes to town. And I am mortified, right? I'm not going to lie. I was like, what in the... And that's when he tried, when he started telling me. And that's when I got, a little bit more intimate with his life, of, how he grew up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's how I started finding out. And it was like, I get it. I totally get it. So thank my lucky stars, I don't have to eat pig eyes, but if I'm hungry
kidding.
enough, I guess.
So I have been fortunate enough, and this is not a bragging moment, I'm just being honest. I have had 75% of my grandparents up until last year. Now I'm down to 50%. Wow. So my kids have had their whole entire lives with 75% of their great-grandparents, which is super unusual. It's just rare these days.
Yeah, definitely.
So I fucking love Thanksgiving dinner, where my grandma tells my kids, or my grandpa would tell my kids, how they would get backhanded if they spoke without being spoken to first. Or that my grandma had to poop in an outhouse, go to the bathroom in an outhouse in the hills of Maryland, rural Maryland, because they didn't have indoor plumbing. And that they had not enough bedrooms in their house for her and her brother to sleep in the same house. Her brother got to stay in the house. She had to sleep at her grandparents' house. So real, you know what I'm saying? Like those Depression era times.
Yeah.
I think it's critical that young kids hear the way things used to be, because to them, you hear about it in a book or a movie, it's like, yeah, so what? Someone made that up. That shit was real.
Yep. And I think that's really what my grandpa was trying to instill, of make sure you're humble, to know where you came from and what made you, or what got you to that point. It wasn't, technology. It was the sweat off a lot of people's backs and stuff like that. And it just makes me feel like I take things a little less granted, I guess I would say.
I agree that I can see that in you. You are what I would consider a purist. I mean, I know that you enjoy the fruits of your labor and today's modern technologies, just like the rest of us. But from what I gather, you are a true woodsman. And how did you... Well, I keep asking people this question, and they just tell me the same thing, and I imagine you're going to tell me the same thing. So I'm going to assume that since you were self-taught and you are such an incredible woodsman, that is just something that you had to do. And because you had to do it, you just sharpened and honed your skills all these years, and you realize, am I correct in assuming you've just realized that's the best thing you can possibly do?
I don't I don't want to go as hard to say I had to. Don't get me wrong. My mom worked her ass off to provide pretty good life for me, even being a single mom. But it was just something that, that first kill really just it clicked something in me where it was like, this is what I want to do. Like
Yeah.
it was a want, and then it
Okay.
was a drive, and then I started paying attention to all the like little details, and it just started. I put some stands and some things started clicking and things like that, and it just kept driving me to I want to learn more. I want, and again, to sound selfish, I wanted to put myself in the best possible spot whenever I could, right? Because the farm was hunted. It wasn't just one person on this whole farm. It was littered with orange pumpkins,
Okay.
growing up. So it was one of those things where I was vying for spots, and being the youngest, I always got dumped in the crap spot. It was like,
Interesting.
this is all you got left. And then finally it was, it kind of pushed me of like, no, I want to sit here. This is where I want to sit.
Okay.
And I remember the year that it finally kind of, my brother, I called him the chief because he was almost the one that like dictated where everybody would go and all that kind of stuff. I said, no, opening day, I'm sitting here that's where I'm going. And sure as heck, I wound up shooting a nice buck that morning, and it was just one of those things where it was like a solidify kind of, and it just doesn't, it just grows every single year. I try to pick up those finite details.
That's awesome. Did you have, in order to sharpen these skills and hone these skills and learn the details and catch the licking branches as you're doing your scouting and recognizing what a scrape, the difference between a scrape and a rub, and learning about scrapes and rubs just in general, and how did you have very many unsuccessful seasons, or have you historically been pretty successful every year?
No, in the early days, it definitely was struggle, and honestly, up until the last 15 years or so, really, it was a struggle. I'd shoot deer here and there, but it was definitely not as consistent as now. That's definitely not it wasn't the case. There was definitely a long period of time where I just couldn't even put myself on a deer, right? It was like, oh, I've got this figured out as a kid, and then you're sitting there getting skunked after skunked after skunked, and you start realizing something you're doing wrong. And that was when I started learning wind. There wasn't the YouTube, there wasn't as many publications out. There was a couple, and I'm struggling for the name of the book, but I remember my first book, and it was all about deep woods bucks. And granted, I grew up in ag land, like, mixed ag. I didn't have deep woods. My block of woods is 20, 30 acres, maybe sometimes more. But I just wanted to learn anything I could about deer. And so I started learning some of those. And one of them was scouting. One of the chapters in there was scouting. So I started using that information on how rubs, if the rub is pointed this direction, the deer is coming from this way. And I started backtracking and, then spooking deer and going, oh, wait a minute, I backtracked a little too far. Now I got to be in, not at A and not at C, but I got to find B. And then when I started really figuring those things out, it started to get really successful. And kind of the time that really solidified it, I had a buck that I've been seeing, and my brother, I kept telling him, I'm seeing a really nice buck. I'm seeing a really nice buck. And he, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And I'm like, I'm moving in on this guy. And, that's my definition of mobile hunter. You hear it a lot where guys are trekking miles. Mine, I can't trek like that, but my mobile is if I'm seeing something, I'm getting down and I'm moving that day or the day after to try to get closer to him. And I just slowly worked my way into this buck, and I'll be damned if I didn't get it. And it was my first Pope and Young.
Nice.
I was 16 years old.
Nice.
It scored a 125 and 1/8.
Perfect.
But, it was like, hey, to me, it was an absolute giant. And,
Hell
and
yeah.
sure as heck, calling my brother, that was like the coolest phone call of I got him. I told you, like I knew. And he come, and it was just like the celebration of celebrations. So it just kind of, went from there.
So when you're back at 16 and you're doing your mobile hunting where you're seeing something and you're narrowing it down and you're moving from one evening to the next, either morning or evening, what are you using for a stand setup at that time?
Oh man, at that, I don't know.
Was it permanent sets?
It was heavy lock on.
Okay.
And screw in steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not a simple, easy, light and maneuverable setup.
Oh no, I remember like multiple times looking back on it, like really close calls of falling out of trees while trying to set them up, before lifelines and belts and stuff and dangling out of branches and just doing dumb stuff. But it really got me to where I needed to be and got me in that little window. So I did what I had to do to try to be successful.
I think you make a really good point. A lot of people think of mobile hunting in state forests and big woods type scenarios. And just like you said, our 80-acre piece down in Hillsdale, I almost exclusively mobile hunt. We have a couple permanent spots that I will climb in if I want to shoot a doe that are almost slam dunk spots just based on where they're at. Permanent sets, been there for years, kill deer out of them constantly. But I almost exclusively mobile hunt because every single summer there are storms and blowdowns and those deer change their travel corridors. So for people that are listening to this that think, man, I only hang lock-ons on my private property, you don't have to. You can mobile hunt private property. It's just as fun, if not more fun, because you know it even better.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And even your neighbors, that's one of the things that in today's world that kind of gets lost. Everybody feels like every private piece is this unpressured mecca and there's nobody around it. Well, like I had pieces where there was 20 people on 20 acres, it was like still to this day, one of my next door neighbors has 20 acres and there's 8 people that hunt it. You know what I mean? Like that's insane boatload of pressure, just as much as public land. And that was kind of another driver. I had to find that pocket in the farm where nobody was at or where nobody was trouncing through or whatever. So it definitely mobility is huge. I mean, that's what pushed me to go to that Mobile Hunters Roadshow last year. It wasn't, that I'm trekking in for miles. It was, I got to learn a different method or different ways from some of these guys that are just jamming on this stuff to improve myself, even on my pieces that aren't nearly as big as what they're hunting. But again, just to try to get any piece of information from every single person I talk to and put that in the memory bank in the Rolodex and pull it out when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah, that mobile, I love going to that thing. And I know the products that are there. I don't need any more products, but I like to go there and listen to those classes that those guys have, to say hi to people that I see only on Instagram, introduce myself to people that I've talked to on Instagram. But I love going to the Mobile Hunter Roadshow, especially for it's like, what, $20-$25, man?
Right.
Totally worth it. And you are almost guaranteed to learn something.
Yeah. Oh, guaranteed. Absolutely. I mean, think about the board or panel, whatever you want to call them, the guys that spoke. That's a collection of knowledge and experience that I don't know that you can get anywhere else, truthfully. I mean, just in one line talking about similar things at the same time and even that was something that at this last one that I kind of noticed was even though all those guys are mobile and whatever, they're all still hunting differently.
Yep.
And that's where it was, kind of hit home to me of, you don't have to hunt the same as everybody else. Take a little piece here and there, but still do your own game, which, what I've done my whole life. And it just, again, solidified I'm on the right track of trying to get to that point.
And it sounds like you did it. If you ask me, like I pay attention to what you do and what you've accomplished and what you're working on your farm and the deer that you're seeing and the deer that you're harvesting and all the things that you're doing, man, I think it's phenomenal. And like you said, I'm plucking little nuggets out that you share and applying it to my situation. And that's, I think, what this is all about is figuring out what your adventure is that you want to chase and then gather as much intel as you can and work as hard as you can till you can achieve that adventure. And that's just keep chasing that high, man. And that's what I do every year. Try to have another adventure.
Yep, I agree.
So so now we're 16 years old and you're a mobile man all of a sudden. And, if I think when you're 16 and when I was 16, man, never in my wildest dreams did I think about hunting. I was playing sports and it was hockey year round for me. What was it like as a teenager in school? Like, did you grow up in a school where lots of dudes hunted or was it kind of rare?
No, I grew up, country bumpkin.
Okay.
Oliver Old High School is where I graduated. So it was, a pretty country situation, and I had, of course, my core group of friends that hunted. Nothing like today where everybody really truly networks and kind of hunts together and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
of course, we would all come back and share our stories and all that good stuff, and have our bows in the back of the car and
Nice.
go to each other's house and shoot and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a good time. Definitely a good time.
I wonder who I knew at the time that hunted and I didn't know that they hunted. And that kind of, I think back a lot about opportunities that I didn't get to do for hunting, but I was doing other things that I'm very thankful for. But man, it makes me wonder because I currently live in the same town that I went to high school in, and there's tons of land around me, and there had to have been dudes that hunted. I just didn't even know it. Man.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder how many guys I knew. Okay, so now we're getting closer to that time frame where your brother, which I meant to highlight or put a pin on earlier. You said your brother shot a 201-inch deer in Michigan?
Yep, 22 scoreable points with a bow, compound bow, clear water. Yeah,
what
man.
the fuck?
So, all right, the craziest thing is I was a wrestler. I loved wrestling in high school. And I remember my brother calling me and being like, "Hey man, do you mind if I sit at we called it the small pond. It was a piece of my grandpa's property where there was literally a small pond on it, right?" So he's like, "Do you mind if I go sit and you're staying at the small pond? I'm going to get out of work a little late, and that's the easiest, quickest one to get to." And of course, I'm like, "Yeah, man, you put up stands for me and let me hunt in your stuff. Like, go for it." And my mom wound up coming to get me at wrestling, and she's like, we need to go see your brother. I'm like, what's going on? It was before cell phones. And she's like, apparently he shot a big buck. And I'm like, well, how big? She goes, well, big enough that the DNR is there. And I'm like, what?
What?
I'm like, wait, what? So this is 1998. All right. We all know 1998 and the infamy of Mitch Rompola. So this was October 8th or 9th, right? This buck wasn't shot in rut. This was early season. Mega, right? And my dad had the wherewithal to tell my brother, don't touch that deer. Call the DNR right now. Like, you got something that we don't see very often. And we just so happened to have a DNR officer right down the road. Her name was Cherie. She was awesome. She would stop by our butcher shop. She would have a beer with us when we were celebrating our kills. And it was just a cool atmosphere to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So she came right away, inspected, saw that, the arrow hole, saw that it wasn't gutted, it was still warm, kind of certified, took a bunch of pictures and all that kind of stuff, just to make everything good. Of course, Donnie was on Fred Trost, Big Buck Night, all that kind of stuff. He had shot the biggest deer, of course, the year in the state of Michigan. At the time, it was number 4 non-typical. I think It slid down quite a bit by now, but yeah, it was life changing. And of course, then you started hearing the rumors. It was poached. It was this. It was that. And it's like, we just, as hunters, you hear it now. Everybody fighting. It's been fighting for a while about, in between ranks of hunters and jealousy. And I just remember my brother being super happy with my dad, making him stop and soak in all that time and solidify that it was legal and done right. And so of course all the rumors, went to bed and were gone and all that stuff. But yeah, gosh, man, putting that thing in my hands, I just remember going, what is this behemoth? Like, I've never seen anything remotely close to this.
That blows my mind. Number one. Number two, it blows my mind that it was 1998 and rumors were swirling and there was no social media. And somehow it's exactly the same 40 years later.
Exactly.
Good God. What do you think was it the whole Mitch Rompola thing that made your dad have that approach, period? Like,
I don't think so, because if I remember correctly, Mitch's was after Donnie's.
Yeah, see, I don't even know.
I'm pretty sure it was after. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, October 8th or 9th, there's not a whole lot of chance for anybody, to get something sooner than that. But from what I remember, I'm pretty sure it was after. It's just one of those things, like, even though my dad wasn't a huge hunter, he just had enough, I guess, common sense or whatever to say, like, this is pretty damn big. This might make state record or something. Like, you make sure it's done the right way.
That's impressive, because I can hardly even remember to take pictures of my own deer these days. because I'm in such a hurry to get it in the truck and get everything done and whatever, clean the blood off my hands. The fact that your dad had the wherewithal to think about that is really remarkable. And man, your brother is pretty lucky to have him have said that. So how work with me here? How did the rumors circulate? Was it like at the local dining establishment, like the local cafes? Like where was the hubbub?
So there was still some shows and stuff that kind of happened. So,
okay.
I currently live 1 mile away from the Grass Lake Whitetail Museum, and they had a big event where Milo Hansen was bringing his world record buck.
Okay.
And my brother has this cool plaque made behind his whitetail and everything, and he took it there. And even Milo Hansen said, "I heard about this buck."
Holy shit!
And it was like, in Canada, like what, really? Well, Donnie got into North American Whitetails magazine. He got into several magazines, because at the time, it was a little different than right now, right?
Yeah.
200 incher was something, and everybody talked, and it spread everywhere. And of course, a lot of it was, local stuff. But then it was, you go to shows, and somebody would come up to you, "Oh yeah, would you shoot it with a mag light?" Or a lot of them were joking. Don't get me wrong, but it was just one of those things where it just kind of sucked because Donnie was young, at the time too. So it was like, a lot of them just didn't like it because a young guy that put in a shit ton of effort. Like, he was a hunter, man. You know what I mean? Like, he did his work. It wasn't that he just stumbled upon it, even though he happened to get into my stand. But yeah, it was just one of those things. Like, I'm just glad it all passed and everything was good.
Is that a deer that you guys had seen previously and knew, man, there was a big deer last year, he's probably going to be huge this year, or no?
Nope. Whoa. Nobody knew about that deer.
Nobody? Not even the neighbors?
So one person, after my brother shot it, brought a picture of that deer in their backyard.
Like one of those floppy ones you have to shake after you take it?
Yeah, dude. It was like, wait, what? So the guy actually cut the pine tree down that buck rubbed on and gave the rub to my brother.
That's
which was
really cool.
And yeah. But other than that, everybody, we knew all the farmers. Nobody had seen that deer. Dude. So we don't know if it lived there, if it came from somewhere else. That early on, I still don't know, but we're just glad that it happened the way it did.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. So we're getting, now we're getting into the late 90s and early 2000s. Kind of what was your, you're getting maybe late into high school, just out of high school. Like, what was your hunting like at that age, in your late teens, early 20s?
I lived and breathed hunting.
Still.
I have never, there hasn't really been a drop off in my attitude towards hunting. It was live for October 1st. And nice. That's how I always really was. And it just kept going all through my 20s, and it just build off of it.
And were you setting different goals at this point though? Because I'm assuming that as somebody who is as passionate as you about this and has been doing it for so long, I would imagine that you are getting tired of shooting the same thing. Is that safe to say, or not yet? Maybe not yet?
No, not really. At that point, it was still loving to hear the woods wake up, hearing the birds start coming, watching the animals. It was really just, and it still is, and I don't want to take anything away from that. Honestly, hunting keeps me sane, and I don't know, maybe that's cliche, whatever, but it is my soul. Like, it goes and it rejuvenates and makes me forget about the world, and always has. Yep. And that's why I'm so drawn to it, and why I take it so personal. And it was in my 20s. It was just, that was my get away from everything else, get away from work, get away from whatever, and I just loved to hunt. Absolutely loved to hunt. But I didn't, in my 20s, it wasn't like it is now either. I didn't journal like I do now. I would scout, but it wasn't like I do now. It was more of a just be out hunting. I just love to be out hunting. I didn't put pressure on myself. It was just, if a nice buck that gets my heart pumping comes by and it meets our, basic minimums, I was happy with that. We were all happy with that. And then, of course, later in my 20s, mid 20s, that's when it got to be, okay, I've shot, a couple of dozen 100 inchers. I want to step up my game now. I can shoot does. There's a lot of does around. If I'm going to shoot a buck, I would rather have more meat and a bigger set of antlers. I'll be the first one to tell you that I don't necessarily consider myself a trophy hunter per se, but if I'm going to shoot a buck, I do want it to be of mature and trophy class caliber, I guess you'll say.
Oh, absolutely. Have you ever hunted out of state at all?
I did hunt in Ohio for a few years when I was in college.
Okay.
And that was not in like prime Ohio. That was northern flatlands. It wasn't great hunting, but it got me in the woods and I didn't care. I went to trade school, so it was intense classes. I didn't have a whole lot of time off, so it was just jump out, get out, and be happy getting out.
And you went to school in Ohio?
Like pheasant. What's that?
You went to school in Ohio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I went to school at University of Northwestern Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, for trades. And I went out west a couple times for pheasant, and oh man, I can't wait to do that again. But I don't know. For some reason, the out of state whitetail hasn't bit me, only because I feel like there's so much more to go after out of state. And, I'm kind of that guy that likes to go after just about anything.
Yeah.
So if I have a chance to go after something different that I can't see at home, that's kind of what I think, will be my draw to travel.
Okay. I gotcha. Nice. That's awesome. Though I love that philosophy because you're right. I have only ever done out of state whitetail hunting, but I am not naive to the fact that I could probably broaden my horizons and do some other really amazing things. I think just for some reason right now, I am just 100% whitetails. And I do hope to go further west one of these days and either do, mule deer, which I know is such a dramatic difference, but maybe even elk or, bear or something. I would definitely love to do that. I have done bird hunting in the past. When I was in Kansas a couple of years ago, there was a lot of pheasant hunting going on. But what do you, when you think about going west, is there one particular species or game that you would love to do that you haven't done before?
Yeah, elk for sure.
Elk, okay.
Just to hear one rip in a bugle would just definitely send me to the moon. Being in the mountains, I can only imagine how damn cool that would be. I haven't got to do it, so yeah, that's my bucket list, type Western hunt for sure. Any place
west in particular or somewhere specific or?
I have preference points in Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
Quite a few of them. I've just been kind of building up. I can't tell you why necessarily I picked that. It was just kind of, I knew a few people that went out to Wyoming. And it was like, you know what, there's pretty good numbers there. I'll just try to, knock the first one out eventually there. So every year I just keep putting in preference points. I got way more than enough to get an elk when I want to, or get a tag, when I want to. It's just one of those things. It's got to be the right time for the family and stuff. It just hasn't gotten to be that point.
Well, Generations to Hunt Joe, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He, I believe he said that he would go, but I think he said he would never hunt anywhere else if he could either live in Wyoming or hunt in Wyoming every year. Have you heard him say that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think he feels the same way about Wyoming. I don't know anything about it, but I would love to find out about it.
Yeah.
If someone's going to make that declaration, it's got to be pretty special.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, I've never seen it in person. It's just anywhere out there, I think would be perfect for me.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your current hunting property and property management and some of the goals, or maybe some of the improvements that you've made to your property and how you see it going, what your plan is long-term there.
Yeah, so to preface me buying the farm that I own now, I hunted at my in-laws for a while. Kind of got off my family farm and came to the in-laws a little bit because, of course, dating the wife and being over here all the time and whatnot. And it's all ag, heavy ag. It's, a couple hundred acres, but it's 90% tillable. So you're really hunting fence lines and swamps and, a little bit like that. And I would hunt around basically all the way around this piece that I own now. And I always watched this one oak ridge and I saw some nice bucks running it. And I would always just be like, God, if I could just move 100 yards that way, shit would be off the charts, And I this is the line I actually told my wife. I said, I will sell my left testicle to buy that farm. I said, I want that farm. So come to a few years ago, we're looking to buy land, because this is my dream. I'll tell you, this is my dream to own land, to start a small homestead and have deer hunting where I can manipulate the habitat without having concerns, because my grandpa didn't really like me do too much, but we would do some food plots, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. My father-in-law, he's a farmer. He doesn't care about trophy deer. He would rather see most of them gone, right? And it's just the attitude of them. And I started hunting a swamp grass field that I just remember, like, the deer would just hurry through it, and God, it pissed me off. So I started just propagating red osier dogwood, and not knowing what I was really doing. I just knew that they always like to go to them little patches that were growing. And next thing I know, and hopefully he doesn't ever listen to this because he will be pissed if he finds out.
Wouldn't that be something if he was one of my few listeners?
Yeah. So I just started doing that and started making corridors to funnel the deer to me where I could get to them and stuff like that. And it started working, and it was like, this is my jam. Like, I love, and then and not only that, we had pheasants come on the farm, which we haven't had. And it was like, this is cool as hell. Like, doing these little bit of upgrades is changing from a wasted grass marsh to truly holding all types of wildlife. So then we're looking for land. This piece of land next to us, they wanted too much. So we were like, nah, we're not going to buy that. Kind of got our hopes lost a little bit. Well, this particular farm came to us kind of and said, hey, we're willing to sell the whole farm. And it was the price they threw out. Me and the wife said, we will never find a piece of property of this magnitude, size, or whatever for this price. We have got to risk and take this jump.
Wow.
So that's what we did. We risked it. And
it was listed, or it was an unlisted, just sort of a conversation you had?
So it was kind of goofy. They listed the house in a couple of acres separate. And we were like, we're just not interested in that. We want the whole kit and caboodle if we're doing it, because we can't afford property only. With the house, we had to be somewhere we could live or do, to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And then they kind of come to the agreement that they would just let the whole farm go, because they knew my in-laws' family for the whole time they've lived here. And they knew that we weren't looking to divide it up. We were not looking to do any of that. We were truly wanting to keep it farmed or, do whatever. And so it kind of helped us, right? That was
100%.
The ceiling deal. We had the same values as they had. So
I think that's a big thing these days, is because one of the saddest things I see by me is when a farmer sells 40 acres and they cram 3.5 houses on it. Yeah. And I'm like, motherfucker. I know that guy did not. I mean, I know he wanted the $300,000, but I don't think he wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, and it's really cool to hear that. Maybe my assumption about what a lot of these old timers want when they sort of get rid of their land, because I feel the same way. I would love to buy a house on a farm somewhere, on land somewhere, but having the wherewithal to say to somebody, listen, I value this for what it is, and my intentions are to raise a family here and get those kids to experience that, I think would resonate, not to play mind games with somebody, but it's important that people hear what your intentions are with something that has sentimental value to them. And not just that you're some businessman who, like you said, wants to split it up, sell a bunch of cookie cutter ranches on it, and then make $1 million and walk away, never to be seen again. Yep. That's a really cool story, man. That's awesome. Well, how long have you been there now?
It kind of leads me to today, where I'm pulling, I don't farm myself. I'm a farm hand, if you will. I give hands here and there, running grain trucks, stuff like that. I'm not a farmer myself. So the farmer that does the ground now has farmed it for a long time. And I just felt for the first few years, I didn't really want to just rip it away from him, right? That's a piece of ground he's made his living off of. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do to the farm, and I knew I needed a little more education before I just started doing a bunch of crap to the farm, and tearing it all up and destroying it. But the farm lease is up, and I'm going to convert quite a bit of it into just straight up habitat for all kinds of stuff. And I'm just starting to really get into it now, where I'm making a lot of changes and a lot of adjustments and getting ready to take a lot of the ground out of tillable and put it into, some switch grasses and some food plots and some thermal cover with pines and some mixed, hardwoods and stuff. So I'm
Well,
excited as hell.
why those specifically? What did you not see, or what did you see that told you or helped you to formulate a plan? Like what made you formulate a plan? What was it missing?
So, finally getting here, and the first year that I had it was probably the wettest year that I've had in a long time. And it made me realize real quick that my swamp was really temperamental.
Mm.
When it's dry, I hold a pile of deer and some really nice deer because the pressure gets on and it pushes it to them, right? Well, if I get any moisture in the fall of any type of substantial rain, they're gone. And there is nothing to hold them because, of course, all the upland soil is tilled. It's, making money off of it. So my big thing was holding cover. I'm missing holding cover. So I had to try to use some of the drainages and hills and valleys. I think, at least that's my goal now, is to get some of those south and southeastern facing hillsides into some nice cover and bedding, and then try to get a pattern of use or a travel, distinctive travel, instead of everybody knows that you hunt a cornfield. There's a million ways the deer like to enter a cornfield, but there's a couple of key features of where they'll enter, and I found out over the years. So I want to try to use that, right? They already want to use that area, so now I want to give them what they want, side cover. So that's my formula to what I'm doing. And, again, I am not a professional in any way, shape, or form, but I absolutely love trying things. I don't care if I fail and it doesn't work out like I wanted it, but I have fun doing it and seeing how the deer respond to it. So,
And so have you done a couple little tests so far on anything yet?
Yeah, I've done some stuff, like the last few years, of course I put in some food plots. I've kind of manipulated how the food plots are setting, where they're setting, to see how it changed the deer path travels through my woods. Of course, like you said, some downfall or deadfalls, cutting trees, learning how to hinge cut and use that to to pinch them down to certain areas. Just kind of monkeying with that kind of stuff and learning how to use it to my advantage. And it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of work too, because I don't want this to sound like, yeehaw, it's a super fun, no sweat, I'm just going to hop out there and get it taken care of. You work your ass off out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all the time. And that's the funny thing too. Like, yes, I'm on Instagram or whatever, but I don't document a quarter of what's actually happening. My scouting, my work that I'm doing. I don't want to live on social media, right? Like, I got on social media to just find like-minded people like you, and to share what I am doing and not to tell people what to do.
100%.
There's enough of those talking heads out there that are, well, this is what you do or you're not going to. I don't like that, because that's not how it works. Everybody's piece is different. And that was kind of how I took it. I'm just going to try to see what happens on my place and have fun with it.
That's awesome. Well, if someone were to, like me, for example, if I were to want to take it upon myself to do, what is it, the nitro boost in the spring? If I wanted to do a spring summer mix from Vitalize with the nitro boost, what would be, like, let's say I've made that decision. This is what I want to do. It's February. It's the end of February. What do I need to do? Step number one.
Of course, you got to put the food plot in the right location.
Okay.
I'm still learning that. I'm not going to say I'm the whiz on that either, but you always hear it, and it's true though. Your entrance and exit, if they're not set up right, you're killing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And your 80 acres just got pushed down to 2 acres, and people just don't realize that. So location is definitely key, but that's your first step, is making sure you're putting it in a correct location. Again, mine's a blank slate, so I don't have to worry about cutting down trees so much of where I'm putting food plot. But then, of course, you got to open canopy if you're not in a situation like mine. And then, of course, weed control of some magnitude or some method, whatever you decide to do, because there is so many different variations of that out there. Get the weeds under control as fast as possible. As soon as spring green up is out, if you haven't prepped it the fall before, start spraying if you're okay with that, or whatever you want to do to get it killed off. Competition is the number one thing. Get rid of the competition.
Interesting. Okay. And how about soil testing?
Yeah, that's obviously that's a huge thing. Definitely. So I mean, that could even be prepped before it if you really wanted to get after it. Take your soil samples here. Obviously, you could here shortly, depending on your weather, and ship them in. So you got that idea before you're after it.
Where do what do you do with them? Like, I really don't know. What do you do with your soil? You put it in a bag and mail it to somebody?
Yeah, basically.
So seriously?
Yeah. I mean, if it's dry enough that you don't have to worry about it much. I mean, you go out and dig an 8-inch hole or so, and a bunch of them, or several of them. I've heard so many different things. The farmer that I've learned from or whatever would never mix the soils. He would put sample 1 as sample 1, sample 2 as sample 2, where you'll hear other guys that'll say, take 25 samples, put all that dirt, mix it together, and then send in, 3 or 4 or 5 samples or something.
Oh, for like an average?
Yeah, kind of an average type thing. I can't say that I know what the right way, if there is a right or a wrong way on that, but
okay.
I still just, if I'm putting a sample here, that's my sample 1. If I'm doing another one, it's sample 2. Because like on my property, you can actually look and see where the soil changes.
Oh,
in the hills, like the hill closest to my house is pretty sandy and very small, not much rock. The very next ridge line back is rocks up the wazoo, and it just changes. You know what I mean, from ridge to ridge. So that's kind of how I do it, just because my stuff is far apart. And
okay.
I can't say that I've seen huge differences in my samples, though, so I don't know that it's that big of a deal, but I'm imagining somewhere someone could probably run into that.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that yours is formerly ag? Like you have a pretty consistent something?
It's been pounded to death. I mean, I got basically no organic matter.
Wow.
It's just been pounded. The soil is not good. I need a pile of lime, so your soil test is going to tell you your pH. That's pretty critical to get the pH to the right area, or else your plants cannot uptake the minerals like they need to. And then, of course, it will tell you your fertilizing recommendations based off what you're telling them you're going to plant. So they'll give you an idea of what you need to do and make that soil as good as it can for the time being. So that's, again, why I went into the Vitalize of year after year of rotating the nitro boost, which is nitrogen fixation dominant, with clovers and a few other things, and then your carbon load in the fall, which is getting your organic matters and stuff like that into the ground, and that rotation just starts to build and build and build until that soil is really good stuff.
That was such a fascinating thing to listen to, and I can't remember whose podcast he was on, but I listened to him talk about that. And I was so inspired to do it. Of course, I don't have the means or the property to do it, but I'm very inspired to do it. And one of these days, I probably will. Like, in your opinion, is there a food plot that is too small? Like, if I have, say, a quarter of an acre to do a food plot, is that a waste of my time?
That's very situational dependent.
Okay.
My area, deer densities are very, very high.
Same.
So I have gotten away with those, but you have to be in the right type of food plot, right? Clovers can handle it, a little more, clover chicory. So if I guess people call them kill plots, when you're hunting small plots, you're going to want something that's going to be able to take that browse pressure for sure. And that's one of the things I got started in was cereal rye.
Okay.
It was around. And it was
I have
cheap.
heard that.
Yep. And it's super easy, right? It grows in a damn bed in my truck.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, like, start with that, get them to where they're coming to it, kind of thing. But there can be, of course, like soybeans. I can't get a soybean to grow unless I've got 3, 4, 5 acres of soybean. They'll nuke it down. They'll eat it before. And it's a waste of time at that point to try to do soybeans. But that's, again, one of the reasons why Nitro Boost attracted me, was because there's so many different forages that come on at different times that it keeps the browse pressure down on the beans so that they can get up, and it just gives them their choice when it's their time to eat that food, if you will. So that's another, like I've journaled immensely since I was young, and it got started with my grandpa would take pictures of every kill, the date, the where it was shot kind of thing, the weight, and I just found patterns. And then I started journaling to find more patterns. So then I started watching what deer were eating at what time of the year. And that's kind of how I started to get my mobile hunter, if you will, of, oh, hey, it's middle of October. They're going to start transitioning off of beans, and they're going to start going to, X, Y, or Z. And that's kind of how I try to stay ahead of them. I make my move generally before I even see the deer switch, to try to be ahead of them, what they're coming to next. And it's not a science. It's not 100% bulletproof, but it has definitely worked through the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. You're hypothesizing based on your experiences, and you're making notes, and you're just doing the best you can. That there are so many things that every offseason I tell myself, I'm doing better about this year, and that's one of them. And man, it just got added to the list. Is like, man, I know that as soon as they cut ag around me, like you said, beans, I don't know where they go. I haven't figured it out yet. So I've really got to pay attention. I really want to pay attention to this year, especially on our private pieces. My private piece by my house is a shit show, but the one down in Hillsdale is probably in a similar geographic location as what you're talking about. And I really need to make more notes about what are the deer doing as soon as they take those beans down.
Yeah, so I mean, you can even get prior to them even taking the beans down, and that's one of the things that I have been successful with, of noticing certain areas in the bean field that section will stay greener longer than the rest of the field. So when the rest of the field starts to turn, the deer are going to stop eating the leaves, right? Because when they're green, that's what they're there for. They're not eating the bean pods. They're eating the leaves. So as soon as they start to turn, if you can find that one sliver that's close to the woods or whatever that you can get access to, or even just catch them as they're going to that sliver, you just extended that bean field's usefulness, an extra week or two or whatever. And of course, once it's cut, that's a little different. You got a couple of days of just insanely banner hunting with all the fresh beans on the ground.
Yeah.
And then after that, it does seem to die right off.
Yeah, we do have a south, probably half the property on the south side's got about some 40-foot tall, large, what the fuck are they called? The Great Northern Pines or something like that. And then the entire west edge of that field is the same pines, but they're like 60 feet tall. And so those are the shaded edges, and you aren't kidding. They stay green way longer, and that is exactly where those deer are. The cool thing about that I have noticed is just inside those pines are oaks. And so when we do have a good oak year, like this year, like with the acorns, that there was no question this year where they were, but most of the time I can't figure it out. It's one of the neighbors. Very cool stuff, man. The journaling thing is caught on with me, listening to people like you and a few others over the last couple of years. And I can't say for certain that it has led me to be successful the last couple of years, but something has worked the last couple of years. And I reread my notes frequently about, and then compare them to pictures and sightings, and I really am a firm believer in the journaling, man, and I love it.
Yeah, I will, without a shadow of a doubt, I know for a fact several deer that I have were 100% because of journaling and from historical information. And I am 100% believer that deer repeat themselves. And what I mean by that is there may be one really nice buck now running this particular path, using this wind in a certain way or method. It may not be for 3 or 4 years, but then you'll see another buck doing that exact thing. And then you go, bam, light bulb. Mm-hmm. I remember, and again, I'm not huge into naming deer, but when I start getting history with them, I want to give them a little bit of respect in knowing them,
sure.
So I do kind of throw a name at some of them so I can remember what I'm doing or remember that deer. And I'll start to look back at that and go, okay, this is what he was doing. And as a matter of fact, this deer right over my shoulder, right there, is 100% from historical journaling. I watched a buck do exactly what that deer did like 8 or 9 years prior to what this deer did, and it made me move. And it is the 100% reason why I was successful on that particular buck.
Man, that's amazing. It's amazing that you didn't say 2 years. You said 8 or 9. The fact that you have 8 or 9 years of documentation that you're able to reflect back on is awesome.
I've got decades.
Dude, that is. And you shared a link to your favorite journal, did you not?
Well, that was a buddy of mine that I actually, another guy I met on the internet, and he just wanted to get something out there. He was inspired a little bit by my journaling and his journaling, and wanted to get something out there for people, because people would just ask, like, well, what are you doing? How do you set it up? You know, when you're at trade shows and stuff, and I would kind of go through it, but I am super granular. Like, I don't think anybody would want to take notes like I do. I'm sure of that, because it's very, very granular and too much information. I won't lie. There's a lot of information that I will never use, but at the time I felt that it was pertinent, and I may use it.
Mm-hmm.
So that journal is more of a get yourself started in a basic journal, but it's what a lot of people I think should start with. It's got all the basics in there to get yourself. It's small enough to carry in your backpack.
Nice. With
a little pen if you wanted to. And it was just a cool little thing that I was like, you know what, I'm definitely going to support him and push that out for guys to see, people to see, and try to get down this path of journaling.
Very cool. Very cool. You just said something that, made me think of something. Damn it. Now I can't remember what it was. That's okay. You know, if there was somebody like, I think a lot of people are turned off by the amount of work that it takes to start a food plot. And again, I don't want to beat your food plot knowledge to death here, but if someone was intimidated by starting a food plot, what would you say to them to either encourage them or talk them out of it? Is there, what would you say to somebody who's sort of on the fence?
I would say start with the materials that are less likely to fail. So start with the cereal rye. Start with the brassicas. They're small seed, very easily to get seed to soil contact. Very little equipment do you actually have to have. You can look back at my Instagram. I don't give a shit what my stuff looks like as long as it functions, right? So I have had some crazy contraptions of sprayers and mowers, or I don't care. If it gets the job done, that deer don't care what, pile of shit came in there and got it done. Or weed whippers, whatever you can use. Because I guarantee you that one time that all the pieces all come together and it's successful for you, you're going to be like, damn, all that work was worth every single ounce of effort that I put into it. And it will change you. It will change you. You will be fiending for more. You will want to continue. You will want to expand. It did for me. So
what I just heard was there are no shortcuts. There are no quick fixes. There's no easy snap your fingers. If you think you want to do a food plot because you want to attract deer into your area and hold them for just a little bit so you can have an opportunity, you have to make a decision within yourself that you are willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. And if that means
I couldn't have said that any better. That is exactly it. I mean, because a lot of the stuff that I started with was on the edges of cropland. No farmer is giving up ground that's making them money.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say, hey, I need 2 acres of this and I'm going to put in a food plot for deer that you don't want terrorizing your fields. So anything that you can kind of make work is better than nothing. And that was my adage always going in, is something is better than nothing, and something today is better than, nothing yesterday. So that's exactly it, is make that decision in yourself that you're going to put that hard work in, and also be ready though for it to not be successful. Right? I mean, that's the other thing, is Mother Nature can be a brutal bitch and she can wipe out your best plans, or a simple miscalculation on your end of how you hunt it, how you access it, whatever, could make it a complete failure. So be ready for the failures, but be okay with failures. And again, I don't even want to say failures necessarily. Maybe learning lessons is a better way to say it, because even if you don't get the outcome you want, you still should be learning something from it. So
Yeah.
you should be getting some type of information from it. So that's definitely it. Get out there, get after it. Try to put luck in your side.
It's fantastic.
Definitely.
Does Jake have any superstitions as it relates to his hunting?
Oh, wow.
A lucky hat, a lucky pair of underpants.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, I do have a lucky stocking hat. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So my one of my friends was the athletic director for Homer High School, and they used to put on like a fundraiser for the football team that was outdoors. And this was a while ago. And before my current streak of 11 straight years of 3.5-year-olds or older in Michigan, I got this beanie. And I swear to you, that beanie is in every one of my kill pictures. And I've messaged him and said, I don't know what it is with this hat. But I've actually had at times where I'll almost freak out a little bit where I can't find it. And I'm like, where's my hat? Where's my freaking stocking hat? And I don't care if it's 70, I'm wearing that goddamn stocking hat. So yeah, I guess now that you say that, that hat has been with me through some cool shit. So
that's a long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Man. That's really cool, man. I love it. And what does it look like? What does it say?
It's just a simple camouflage beanie, and it's got like some deer antlers, and I think it says like Homer Athletics or something like that, just stitched in light brown. It's nothing crazy, nothing fancy, but
man,
yeah,
that's cool.
I'm looking at, some of the stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's on. It's in everything.
That is super cool. Well, how was your season this in 2023? How was it for you this year?
It was a bittersweet season. So it's funny you had mentioned goals. I never really was like a true goal-driven person. Like, of course I had little ones, but I never really like set checklists or anything like that until actually me and you talked about some goals.
Yeah.
I think it was over, Instagram Messenger. And I'm like,
yep.
You know what? I'm setting some goals this year. And I'd set it for the last few years that I really wanted to step up from, and I'm not great at aging on the hoof, but I really wanted to graduate from 3.5 to 4.5. Like I really wanted to make that step in my hunting career. And and after last year, I shot a really nice, 3.5-year-old buck.
Hell yeah.
But I was like, this is my year to stop that. You know what I mean? So this year comes, very first sit, I got a beautiful 115, 120 inch, 3.5, 9 point, and I let it walk. And that's the biggest deer that I've ever let walk, and I'm going, whoo, what exactly was I thinking right there? But if I want to step up, I've got to take that hard pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
So I passed him. And
when was it? When was that again?
10 point. What's that?
When was that first pass?
Oh, geez, October 9th. 10th.
So early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. My very first sit of the season. Yep. And then I started seeing a nice 10 point. And the pictures made him, maybe a little bigger than what he looked like in person. And then I started seeing him in person. I passed him a couple of times. I passed a couple of slam dunks. And I remember both times, like the first time it was like, oh my God, why did I just let that deer walk away? And then the second time it was like, okay, you passed him the first time, you can do it again. And the second time it was easy. Then some things kind of happened around the area, and I don't know why. I got caught up in it, right?
It happens.
And he presented me with just an absolute, just like everything was beautiful. And I was with a gun, and that's, I think, one of my regrets is I would have rather shot him with a bow, and I think I would have been much happier. But as soon as I shot him, I was like, you idiot.
Oh.
You just dropped your goal. He was one of the 2 deer that I said, I am going to pass, because nobody in my area would pass those deer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to set that bar for myself. And when I didn't, it wasn't that the deer isn't nice, and I feel terrible saying that. I really, truly do, because I feel like I'm taking away from that animal. But I was mad at myself for not sticking to my goals.
Sure, I get it.
But one thing I will say is that cemented I think, truly cemented that this is my year where I'm taking that step and I'm going to watch some hard passes walk by, and I've got to be okay with it. So, I've got him. He's Euro mounted right up here, and I get to look at him and go, he's going to be a deer that's going to completely change my hunting career from here on out.
That's fantastic. I think it's incredible that you can say that out loud and say it for other people to hear and be honest with yourself, because most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't admit it.
I'm very fortunate to have a couple of, neighbors that are really on the same page as me.
That's huge.
So I think that was one of it too, was like, you don't have to worry about the neighbors. Maybe I don't want to say there's a bunch of them that I would have to worry about. But this particular deer was clearly living on my farm. And I knew what he was going to do. And I called exactly what he did. And he did exactly what I knew he was going to do. And I think that was kind of some of it was like, he wasn't going to the neighbors that day. He was not in any danger. Why? It was just another one of those things of like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. And so you took one buck this year.
Yep. I took one buck, and that was, I'm a little vocal about, I would like to see Michigan go to one buck. And I get it. That doesn't suit everyone's needs. That's not everyone's fancy. I understand that. I'm also not afraid to say that I would like to see APRs. Hell, I'll be that guy that says I'd love to see one buck and APRs. But that's probably just because I'm so fortunate, right? I don't want to say that belongs for everyone. But yeah, that's exactly where we're at. Is I just want to take that step up, to take that step up a little bit higher.
I love it, because you answered a question that I hadn't even asked you yet. I was gonna ask you where you wanted to go with that, because you're right. It's a hot topic right now. It's a topic of conversation of most of the people that we interact with on Instagram that are located here in Michigan. There are opinions all over the place. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, you applied to be on that panel, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And you did not get selected, right?
I did not. Yeah, and I'm also one of those that, yes, I am critical of things, and the only way that I feel comfortable being critical of things is either A, trying to help correct what I am critical of,
mm-hmm.
or B, trying to learn more about what I'm critical of, and maybe that will change my ideas, my mindsets, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the only way I thought that I could do that was to try, to at least put myself out there and make myself a little uncomfortable, and knowing I'm just a Joe Smo. I don't probably belong on that panel at all. But mm-hmm. again, if I'm going to be critical of something, I better be willing to risk myself out there to do that.
What were some of the questions? Was it a questionnaire?
It was, you had to fill out and kind of tell them, what you were thinking, what you're just like an overview kind of everything. So it was interesting. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I only know of one person that's got selected, which is the NDA president. I can't remember her name now, but I'm interested to see who's been selected for that.
Me too, because I'm only seeing people that are not selected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have not seen who is. It sounds like it's a pretty broad spectrum of people that got selected. So yeah, I'm interested to see where this goes.
Yeah,
I'm definitely willing to keep my thoughts open to hoping that this will somehow gain some traction or somehow help us all. So yeah, we'll see where this goes.
There is a very complex set of things going on in the Michigan DNR. And I never really thought of it. Most of the time I don't think about it, and shame on me. But most of the time I don't think about the UP, and I don't think about wolves, and I don't think about wintering complexes, and I don't think about migratory patterns of those deer that live up there where there are feet and feet of snow every single year. I don't think about it because I hunt where there is stupid amounts of deer per square mile in both of my areas. And so that's not something I think about. And I realize that the Michigan DNR is tasked with something incredibly challenging. How do you make everybody happy everywhere?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. I will tell you.
I don't know the answer to that either. But one of the things I will say that I'm very critical of is I think the zones are out of control.
100%.
I think these 3 zones are insane. they're nowhere near the same. I don't think even in zone 3 are the deer, densities the same.
Agreed.
So I would really love to see us get back to smaller DMUs, especially now with the mandatory reporting. You have much more data at your fingertips to kind of be a little more controlling or a little more educated in their decision making or whatever. So that's one of the things that I had pitched, in my application, was to try to get a little more data driven instead of emotional driven, because it just seems like a lot of stuff anymore is emotionally driven.
100%. We're not going to beat that to death because it's not a one broad stroke suits everybody's fix. And so I wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about you and your kids hunting, because I have a situation where I think I got my son too early into it, and he killed a deer, and I don't think he liked that. I think he liked being with me in the woods. I don't think that he liked killing something. And forgive me, I've been struggling with a cold recently. I think it turned him off. He didn't even want to hunt this year. We went out for the youth weekend and one time, and that was it. He wouldn't go anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
So I definitely have strong opinions on the youth hunt, and it does not come down to kids shooting big bucks. I am happy for kids to do that. It seems like every time you're critical of the youth hunt, people instantly think you're jealous of the kids, and that's not where I come from. I come from experience of several kids that went through youth hunt, shot nice bucks, shot small bucks, shot, their stuff. And as soon as it came down to reality of sitting in the freezing cold, not seeing a whole lot of deer, they did not like that transition, and it turned them off. They didn't. It was I don't know how to even word it, but almost like instant gratification or instant satisfaction of the youth hunt, where you're seeing a pile of deer, very, very easy to pattern. And then when they get older and age out of it, it's not that easy anymore. I've seen a lot of parents where they don't want to spend time with the kids in the woods anymore because now it's taking time away from the parents to hunt. And it just, I don't think that it is helping hunter retention or, new hunters as much as they thought it was. But that's, again, just my personal take from the experiences that I've seen with that. And that comes along to what your point is. I also know several kids that shot something not realizing that's final. You just took an animal's life. And I watched a couple of them kind of lose it a little bit when it all hit them and it turned them off.
Yes.
And maybe they just weren't mature enough at that point. And I'm not going to sit here and say all kids are the same, because I know that that's not the case. There are some kids that are mature enough where that, my kid has grown up on a farm. He's seen death in our animals. He's seen death in very close animals. He's probably a little more mature when it comes to that than others. And I still don't even think he's ready to go out there, for the next couple of years and actually physically take a life.
How old is he?
He's 6 now.
6, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you see guys out there, whatever. But yeah, I just don't think he's quite ready. And for that exact, I want him to understand and respect that animal and the totality of it all. Of you did just take a life, and it is not something to joke about, and it is not just for the grip and grin. It has to be everything. So that's where I make sure my kid has gone out with me and struggled, not seeing deer, see deer. And don't get me wrong, I try to make it as comfortable as possible. I want him to be, I don't want to be freezing, because then he ain't going to want to go out at all. So I put him in, warmer shacks and stuff like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm spoiling him a little bit, but I also make him come watch the gut job, watch the skinning. This year he's helped me grind meat.
Okay, nice.
I want him, and I want him to be a part of that, to understand this is food. This isn't just out killing, because that hurts me personally. Like, the thought of someone thinking this is just out killing is pretty damaging to hunters as a whole, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I want to make sure he respects that.
That's awesome. That's super great. And that's a tricky age, too, because that's even younger than my son was. And there's a difference between seeing, and I'm not trying to belittle anything that he's seen on your farm. We've seen death on our farm, and the little animals or whatever, the chickens and the ducks and the geese and the whatever that's passed, and the dogs.
Absolutely. I know where you're going. You're right.
there's a difference between seeing and doing.
Yes.
And he's never been able to say that's what it was, but I heard somebody say it on a podcast one day, and it struck me that that's probably what did it. Is he loved being there with me. He loved right up until it was in the back of the side-by-side, and I asked him to take a picture, and he wouldn't touch it.
Wow.
And I was like, something happened.
And there's a lot of parents that would push on their kids to go do it again or whatever, and that's definitely not where I want to be.
No, I'm always like, hey, man, you shoot your bow all year and you're good. We can go this year, but you also don't have to, and I'm not going to be mad. But I'll be ready when you're ready. I buy him a preference point to Iowa every year because probably by the time he's ready, he'll be in his mid-teens, and then we can both go together.
That would be sweet.
But maybe he won't ever go, and he'll just have 41 preference points by the time he's a grown man. Go wherever he wants. Who knows? Maybe they won't even be hunting in Iowa at that point.
Yeah, gosh.
Well, do you have any goals? So I know you said you want to, this year is like firm 4.5. Do you have any goals outside of that this year that you want to achieve?
Most of my goals are habitat related.
Okay.
Like right now, I'm knocking down every swamp birch I can find in my little swamp. It's a useless garbage tree. It doesn't provide anything for really any wildlife at all. So I just want to get rid of every single one of them I can find. So I'm really working hard to really focus on my land to become a better wildlife sanctuary and not just whitetail. I want to be able to hold and grow pheasants and rabbits and squirrels and even animals I'm not going to go after hunting.
Yeah.
Like I have a big section of pollinator blend that I'm going to be putting in. I want the bees to thrive and anything and everything I can provide for any type of wildlife. My goal for this entire farm is to put back more into wildlife or into nature than I am taking.
That's amazing.
That's been my whole adage since I've kind of gotten the habitat. And, I'm providing food in my food plots, not just for the few deer that I'm taking, but for dozens, if not hundreds of deer. So I feel I am effectively helping more than I am taking.
100%.
That's my goal.
I love the pollinator aspect, man. I love that so much. I would love to have a giant field that attracts the pollinators, because I think that's something that people don't even, maybe I'm naive, maybe tons of people think about it. I don't think enough people talk about it. I love it.
Yeah.
Super awesome. Well, Jake, I have sincerely appreciated and truly appreciated your time tonight. Enjoyed chatting with you. I feel like we could talk and do like several of these, and maybe we will. I'd love to have you back on as we get closer to the season and talk about maybe some goals that you have, that you've encountered new goals over the summer, or plans or anything. But can we do this again sometime?
Oh, absolutely, man. Like I said, I'm a deer nerd, dude. Yeah, I can talk for hours about deer and listen to people talk for hours about deer. So
awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to have you here because I know now that you just made a comment earlier, I know where you're at, and that's not that bad. And I would love to have you here. I'm hoping to do something this year in the barn, maybe get some people together, and I'll make sure that you come out for that. I'd like to get a group of guys together, sort of like the Mobile Hunter Roadshow, but just some of the guys that go there that live around here, to just kind of break bread and like a meeting of the minds, so to speak, and just hang out and share stories and tips and tricks and just get together.
I love it. I love talking to you and your brother. When we met at the Mobile Hunters Roadshow, and that's what got me into social media, I'm pretty much the only one in my friends group that takes hunting like I do. So I kind of, to network and find other people and learn, because I just didn't have it around. So that's exactly what it's all about.
Well, I love it. And I appreciate your time. If anybody wants to get in touch with Jake one more time on the, how can they get in touch with you?
So on the face crack, it's Jake Bollinger. And then on Instagram, it's Jake_Hunts_Michigan. So Jake Hunts Michigan.
And again, I'm friends with Jake on Facebook, but I think you'll find the most benefit from his posts on Instagram. He's a great follow, good dude. And thanks again for your time, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yep, we'll talk to you later.
What's happening?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Yep, everything sounds good.
Good deal.
So, just so you're aware, I'm always recording just in case there's a hidden gem on the front end. If there's something that's said that you want taken out, you just let me know. If for some reason our connection starts to go bad, it's because my wife is using the Wi-Fi, and my kids are using the Wi-Fi, and so if you see me turn my camera off, it's not for anything other than my connection's probably bad, and I'm just turning the camera off. No big deal. It's totally up to you, however you want to do it. But either way, I can typically. It's nice. Like if you were here, I could read your facial cues so as to not interrupt you. And so with video, I'll be able to do the same thing. Like the other day, I had Jason, and I kept interrupting him, and it was driving me crazy. Hopefully, it didn't drive him crazy, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's the hard part. You do the little delays and stuff in it too. So
yeah, and I can usually edit out some delays, but the interrupting thing, I feel so bad when I do it. But I can't see his face to see when he's going to stop talking.
Right.
But oh well. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, man. And listen, I want to get to know, I'm going to talk to you about hunting stuff, and I'm going to talk to you about Vitalize Seed and food plots and bucks and certain kills that are memorable to you. But I want to also dig into who you are and your philosophies, and we'll get into all of that stuff as well, but also who you are as a person. And I think it's important to me to try to get people on here that are not the same people that everybody has on all the time,
right?
But also people who have something to say that means something. Like you are, I know you're very knowledgeable in things, and I don't take this the wrong way. You're not one of those names that everybody's having on podcasts. Maybe you will be at some point, but you're not right now. You're not like one of the big celebrity influencers. So,
well, that's what I like the most, man. I like the everyday guys.
Yeah.
To me, it's just more relatable, right? It's more relatable, and I can glean things out of everybody. So yeah, I like to hear that kind of stuff myself.
100%. Well, cool. Well, let me do just a quick. I'm gonna not say anything for a couple seconds, and then I'm just gonna introduce the podcast, and then your name, and then I'll ask you maybe just a little intro. It's Bollinger. Is it Bollinger? Bollinger. Got it.
Yep.
I would have screwed it up. Good thing I asked.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I hear it all the time.